My husband went to the bank every Tuesday at exactly 2 in the afternoon. For nearly 4 decades of marriage, it didn't matter if it was raining or blazing hot. If he had a cold or a headache, Tuesday at 2 was sacred. When I asked him why, he would smile, kiss my forehead, and say the same thing every time. Just making sure we're taken care of. And I believed him. Of course I did. Mark was an accountant. Numbers were his comfort zone, his language, his way of understanding the world. Our bills were always paid early. Taxes filed before deadlines. Retirement plans, college savings. Everything, he assured me, was solid. I never worried. I never questioned. That was his domain, and I trusted him completely. The day he died, I was standing in the produce aisle trying to decide if the avocados were ripe enough. My phone rang and I almost didn't answer. When I did, it was my son Daniel. His voice sounded wrong, flat and careful, like he was afraid one wrong word would shatter me. "Mom," he said quietly, "you need to come to the hospital." Dad collapsed at work. By the time I arrived, it was already over. A massive heart attack, the doctor said. Quick, probably painless, clean. I remember thinking that if Mark had been given the choice, that's how he would have wanted it. Efficient, no mess, no lingering. I didn't cry at the funeral. People whispered that I was in shock, that grief hadn't caught up with me yet. They hugged me tightly and brought casseroles and said things like, "You're being so strong." But the truth was stranger than that. I felt relief. Not because I hated him. I didn't. I loved my husband. But underneath the exhaustion, beneath the numbness, there was a quiet sense that I could finally breathe. I didn't understand why. I just knew something heavy had lifted, even as something else had shattered. 3 days after the funeral, a letter arrived. Plain white envelope. No return address. My name typed neatly on the front. Inside was a single page from a bank I barely thought about anymore. "Dear Mrs. Reynolds, we extend our condolences on the passing of your husband. According to our records, you are listed as the secondary holder of Safe Deposit Box 611. The lease has been paid through the end of the year. Please contact us to arrange access." I read it 3 times. We had a safe deposit box. Mark had never mentioned it. Not once. Not in 40 years. I called the bank that same afternoon. The woman on the phone was polite, professional. Yes, the box was registered to my husband. Yes, I was listed as a co-holder. Yes, I could access it. Thursday morning at 10 would be fine, she said. That gave me 2 days. I spent those days moving through the house like a ghost. Opening drawers Mark had labeled in his neat handwriting. Looking through files that were too organized, too precise. Everything looked exactly the way it always had. So perfect it felt staged, like a life designed to look normal from the outside. Daniel came over Wednesday evening. His tie was loosened, his eyes red and tired. He sat at the kitchen table, the same chair his father had always used. "Mom," he said carefully, "we need to talk about Dad's finances." My stomach tightened. "I've been going through his office files," he continued. "Some things don't add up." "What kind of things?" I asked. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were bank statements I'd never seen before. "Did you know Dad had multiple checking accounts?" he asked. "No," I said slowly. "We only had one. Together." He pointed to the statements. "This one's been empty for months. This one was closed last year. And this one," he hesitated. "It has $47 in it." The room tilted. "That's not possible," I whispered. "Our retirement alone should." "I can't find it," Daniel said. "Any of it." That night I didn't sleep. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling, replaying memories I'd never questioned before. The Tuesday bank visits. His insistence on handling everything. The way he'd pat my hand and say, "Don't worry about the money stuff. I've got it." Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed carefully, choosing clothes that felt like armor rather than comfort. Daniel offered to come with me, but I said no. Whatever was in that box, I needed to face it alone. The bank was all glass and steel, modern and quiet. The manager, a woman named Susan, met me at the entrance and led me toward the vault. Her voice was kind, practiced. "I'll give you privacy," she said, gesturing to a small room with a table and chair. The metal box was heavier than I expected. I set it down and stared at it for a long moment. This small container held something my husband had hidden from me for years. Maybe decades. I opened it. Inside were folders. Too many of them. I reached for the first one, my hands already trembling. And that was when I understood why I'd felt relief after my husband died. Because somewhere deep inside me, I think I had always known. Something was wrong. I don't remember how long I sat there staring into that box. Minutes, maybe longer. Time felt suspended, like the room had sealed itself around me and refused to move forward until I did. The first folder was labeled in my husband's handwriting. Investments. Updated. My chest tightened as I opened it. Page after page of statements stared back at me. Red numbers. Losses. Failed ventures. Risky investments that had collapsed one after another. Names of companies I'd never heard of. Accounts that were never discussed, never mentioned at our dinner table or in bed late at night when we talked about the future. And every single account was in Mark's name alone. The total at the bottom of the final page made my vision blur. Hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. Not slowly, not gradually, but swallowed whole. I told myself to breathe in out. Just numbers, I thought. Just paper. The second folder shattered that illusion. Home equity loans. 3 of them. Taken out against our house. Our home. The walls around me suddenly felt too close, the air too thin. I flipped through the documents with shaking hands. Dates. Signatures. Loan amounts that stacked on top of each other like a cruel joke. Total debt. $268,000. I pressed my palm flat against the table, grounding myself. That house was more than wood and drywall. It was birthdays and scraped knees, holiday dinners and late-night conversations. It was the place I thought was safe. I hadn't known any of this existed. The third folder nearly brought me to my knees. Credit accounts. Primary holder. Me. Except they weren't mine. I'd never opened them. Never received statements. Never held the cards. But there it was. My name, my social security number, my forged signature. 15 accounts. All maxed out. $94,000. My husband had stolen my identity. The man I trusted with everything. The man who held my hand during childbirth, who buried my mother with me, who promised to take care of me until the end. I sat back in the chair, my body trembling as if I'd stepped into ice water. The betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. Surgical. Methodical. At the bottom of the box sat a thick envelope, cream-colored, my name written across the front in Mark's handwriting. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Inside was a letter. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. The words blurred as tears finally came. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. 5 years ago I made an investment I was sure would fix everything. It didn't. Every Tuesday I went to the bank trying to undo it. Trying to find a way out. Instead I made it worse. My hands clenched the paper. The loans. The credit cards in your name. I did it to buy time. I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. I was wrong. By the time you read this, he wrote, we're probably bankrupt. The house may be lost. Your credit is ruined. I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to protect you from my mistakes. I let out a sound that didn't feel human. I love you. That was always real. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope and returned everything to the box. When I stood up, my legs felt weak, but my spine was straight. The bank manager was waiting when I stepped out. She searched my face, concern softening her professional calm. Are you all right? No, I said honestly. But I will be. I asked for copies of everything. Every document. Every signature. And the name of a lawyer who handled financial fraud. Her eyes widened slightly, then she nodded. I'll take care of it. By the time I got home, Daniel's car was already in the driveway. He met me at the door, his expression tight. Mom, I found something else. I didn't look at him. There's no life insurance policy, I said flatly. He blinked. How did you? Because your father spent the last 5 years dismantling our lives very thoroughly. I laid the copies across the kitchen table. Sit down. He read in silence, his face draining of color. When he finally looked up, his eyes were glassy. This is really bad. I know. How are you so calm? I folded my hands together. Because panic won't save us. Planning might. The lawyer's name was Jennifer Morales. We met the following Monday. She listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. The box, the loans, the fraud, the letter. When I finished, she leaned back and sighed softly. "This is spousal financial abuse," she said. "And it's severe." The word echoed in my head. Abuse. It's fraud. Identity theft. And even though he's gone, we can fight this. "How long?" I asked. "Months. Maybe a year. And it won't be easy." I thought about the $47 in our account. About the future I'd believed in without question. "Tell me what we need to do," I said. That night my daughter called. She listened in silence, then whispered, "Dad wouldn't do this." "I have proof," I said gently. "I need time," she replied and hung up. As I stared at the dark screen, I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. The life I thought I had was over. But the truth, no matter how painful, had finally begun. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of phone calls, documents, and silence where there used to be certainty. Jennifer moved quickly. Fraud reports were filed. Credit bureaus notified. Banks contacted. I signed forms I barely understood, my name appearing everywhere it never should have been in the first place. Daniel became my anchor. He came over almost every evening, spreading papers across the kitchen table the way his father used to, but without the secrecy. We talked through every line, every number, every consequence. One night, as we sat surrounded by stacks of documents, Daniel rubbed his face and said quietly, "Mom, I need to tell you something." I set my pen down. "Okay." "A few years ago," he began, staring at the table, "Dad asked me to invest with him. Said it was a guaranteed opportunity. Tech startup. He wanted me to put in the money I'd saved for the kids' education." My heart sank. "Did you?" I asked carefully. "I almost did," he said. "But Sarah didn't trust it. She asked why, if it was such a sure thing, Dad needed my money." He let out a slow breath. "We fought about it. I was angry at her at the time. But you didn't do it," I said. "No." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "She saved you." He nodded, his voice thick. "I think Dad was already desperate then. I think he was trying to fix his mistakes using anyone he could." I didn't contradict him. I couldn't. That same week my daughter called again. Her voice was guarded. "I've been thinking," she said. "Maybe there's another explanation. Maybe Dad was sick. Or confused." "I have his letter," I said gently. "He knew exactly what he was doing. I can't reconcile this," she whispered. "He loved us." "So do I replied. "Both things can be true." She didn't answer. After that she stopped calling. The silence hurt more than anger would have. I understood her need to protect the image of her father. Letting it shatter felt like losing him all over again. Jennifer warned me this might happen. "When truth threatens someone's emotional foundation," she said, "they often reject the truth instead." 3 months after Mark's death, we had our first small victory. 2 credit card companies agreed the signatures were forged. The debts were removed from my report. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that the truth mattered. The home equity loans were another story. The bank's position was firm. As Mark's spouse, I had benefited from the marriage. From the house. From the life. Jennifer pushed back hard. "The money never entered joint accounts," she argued. "It went into accounts she didn't know existed. That's not benefit, that's deception." Still, the bank refused to release the liens. "We'll have to go to court," Jennifer said one afternoon, her tone calm but serious. My stomach twisted. "And our chances?" "I believe we'll win," she said. "But I can't promise." That night, alone in the house that suddenly felt fragile, I did something I hadn't done in years. I updated my resume. At 64 I wasn't in demand. I'd worked part-time as a librarian years ago, then retired early. I'd planned for travel. Quiet mornings. Grandchildren. Instead I applied to bookstores. Cafes. Anywhere that might take someone rebuilding from zero. A small independent bookstore downtown called me for an interview. The owner, Ruth, studied my resume with sharp eyes. "Why now?" she asked. I didn't lie. "My husband died," I said. "And I discovered he destroyed our finances. I'm trying to save my home." She closed the folder. "When can you start?" The job didn't pay much, but it gave me something priceless. purpose. Meanwhile, the court date was set. 6 months after Mark's death. As the day approached, my daughter sent a single message. "I can't be there. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I love you. I'm here when you're ready." The night before court, Daniel sat with me at the kitchen table. "No matter what happens," he said, "I'm proud of you." I smiled faintly. "I'm not being brave," I told him. "I'm just refusing to disappear." And for the first time since everything fell apart, I believed that might be enough. The morning of the hearing arrived wrapped in gray clouds and damp air, the kind that seeped into your bones and refused to leave. I dressed slowly, deliberately, as if every movement mattered. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my name, my life, my right to exist without carrying someone else's crimes. Daniel drove me to the courthouse. We didn't talk much. The silence between us was heavy but steady, like a shared understanding that words would only get in the way. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. No dramatic grandeur, no echoing voices. Just wooden benches, muted colors, and the quiet weight of decisions that would change lives. Jennifer sat beside me, calm and composed. Across the aisle, the bank's legal team shuffled papers with practiced confidence. The judge entered. Proceedings began. The bank's attorney spoke first. He argued that as a spouse, I had benefited from the marriage, from the home, from the stability those loans supposedly provided. That even if I hadn't signed the papers knowingly, I had lived in the house and enjoyed the life built on that borrowed money. Jennifer stood next. Her voice was steady, precise. She presented the forged signatures, the handwriting expert's findings, the separate accounts, the deliberate concealment, and finally Mark's letter, his own admission. "This is not shared benefit," she said. "This is systematic deception." Then she called me to the stand. I raised my hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. "When did you first learn about these loans?" she asked. "After my husband died," I said. "When I opened a safe deposit box I didn't know existed." "Did your husband ever discuss taking equity loans against your home?" "No." "Did you receive any of the money from those loans?" "No." "Did you sign the applications?" "No." The bank's attorney approached for cross-examination. He was young, confident, polished. "You trusted your husband with the finances, correct?" "Yes." "So you chose not to be involved?" "I chose to trust my partner," I replied. "That's not the same as consenting to fraud." He pressed harder. "You lived in the home those loans were taken against." "Yes," I said calmly. "The home we bought together decades ago. The one he put at risk without my knowledge." He leaned forward. "You expect us to believe that for nearly 40 years, you suspected nothing?" The question landed hard. I took a breath. "My husband was an accountant," I said. "He was organized, precise. He hid his failures behind competence, behind my trust. I didn't question him because I believed love meant partnership, not surveillance." I paused. Was I naive? Maybe. But naivete is not permission for theft. The judge called a recess. We waited in the hallway. Daniel paced. Jennifer checked her notes. I sat perfectly still, replaying my daughter's silence in my mind. When we were called back in, the judge reviewed the evidence carefully. "I find clear and convincing proof of fraud," he said. "The forged signatures, the concealed accounts, and the written admission leave no room for ambiguity." My heart pounded. "I rule in favor of the defendant," he continued. "The liens are void. The property is released." Daniel squeezed my hand. We had won. But walking out of the courthouse, I didn't feel victorious. I felt drained. Hollow. Because winning didn't give me back the marriage I thought I had. Or the man I believed I knew. That evening my phone rang. It was my daughter. I almost didn't answer. "Mom," she said, her voice unsteady. "I went to the bank today." I closed my eyes. "I needed to prove you were wrong," she continued. "But you weren't. It's all there. And there's more." My chest tightened. "He had a credit card in my name," she whispered. "I never opened it. It's maxed out." I felt the weight of it settle between us. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have believed you." "Both things can be true," I said softly. "He loved us. And he made terrible choices." She came over that night. We sat at the kitchen table drinking tea, talking honestly for the first time since his death. About love and betrayal. About how someone can be both good and destructive. About grief that doesn't fit neatly into one shape. Jennifer helped my daughter file her fraud claims. Daniel coordinated everything. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild. Not just finances but trust. The bookstore became my refuge. Ruth listened as I told her about the court ruling. He nodded, thoughtful. You know, she said, people think surviving is the hard part. It's not. Rebuilding is. One afternoon, a woman came into the store looking lost. Do you have anything about financial abuse? She asked quietly. I led her to the right shelf. And without planning to, I said, if you need to talk, I understand. We talked for an hour. After she left, Ruth watched me thoughtfully. You're good at that, she said. Believing people. I knew why. Because I knew what it felt like not to be believed. The bookstore changed me in ways I never expected. First, it was just a job. A place to earn a paycheck while everything else in my life was being rebuilt from the ground up. But slowly, quietly, it became something else. A place where people told the truth without realizing they were doing it. Women began to linger near the shelves. They asked about books, on money, on marriage, on trust. Sometimes their questions weren't really about books at all. One afternoon, a woman stood across from me, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. My husband handles all our finances, she said softly. He says I'm bad with numbers. That it's easier if I don't get involved. But something feels wrong. I didn't rush to answer. I once believed that too, I said. Please. Trust that feeling. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. After that, word spread. Ruth and I started a small support circle in the back of the bookstore. Nothing formal. Just chairs, coffee, and women telling stories that sounded different on the surface but identical underneath. Control disguised as care. Silence mistaken for peace. Love used as leverage. The first night I shared my story from the beginning. The Tuesday bank visits. The safe deposit box. The forged signatures. The courtroom. The daughter who couldn't believe me, until she had no choice but to. How did you stay strong? Someone asked. I didn't, I said honestly. I was angry. Terrified. Broken. I just kept moving forward anyway. The group grew. 10 women, then 15, then more. We shared lawyers' names, credit repair tips, and, most importantly, validation. The simple, life-altering truth that they weren't crazy. They weren't imagining it. And they weren't alone. A year after my husband's death, we held our anniversary meeting. 23 women sat in a circle. Some knew. Some healed. Some still trembling. I stood and spoke. When my husband died, I said, I thought my life was over. And in a way it was. The marriage I believed in. The future I planned. All of it ended. I paused, looking around the room. But something else began. Not right away, not easily, slowly. What he did to me was wrong. Legally, morally, completely wrong. I will never pretend otherwise. But what I did next, that was my choice. I chose not to stay silent. I chose not to disappear. I chose to rebuild. After the meeting, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 35. I think my husband is hiding things, she whispered. What if I'm wrong? If you're wrong, I said gently, you feel uncomfortable for a few minutes. But if you're right and you don't look, you could lose everything. She came back a month later with documents in her hands. Her husband had been secretly gambling their savings away. She filed for divorce the next day. I'm scared, she told me, but I'm free. I understood exactly what she meant. My daughter's credit was eventually cleared. My son protected his family's finances fiercely. And I kept working at the bookstore, kept running the group, kept choosing truth over comfort. On what would have been my 39th wedding anniversary, I went to a bank. Not the old one. A different one. I opened an account in my name only. When the teller asked if everything looked correct, I hesitated. I'd like to change the name on the account, I said. Not my married name. My maiden name. As I signed it, something settled inside me. I wasn't erasing my past. I was reclaiming myself. If you're hearing this and something feels familiar, the locked doors, the secrets, the quiet unease you can't explain, please listen to that voice inside you. Love is not blind trust. Love is transparency. Love is respect. And if your world falls apart when the truth comes out, remember this. You are still here. And that means you can rebuild. I did. And so can you. If this story moved you or felt familiar, please share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this remind us we are never alone.